From the New Arts and Media Studios in River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world, I'm Charles Purcell. Hey, we didn't talk about the Oscars yesterday. Let me give you my quick hit on the Oscars. I did watch. I'm not much of a movie guy these days. When I do, on the rare occasion, watch a contemporary Hollywood movie, I'm almost always disappointed. So I've kind of given up on them. I've become a total snob over the years. I only like weird movies, weird independent, classic. I love classic movies, old film noir and old black and whites and old musicals and things like that, and foreign films. I like weird stuff because I've become a snob. I just don't like Hollywood movies. The last one I saw that I liked was Trial of Chicago 7, but that's just because, it's Aaron Sorkin and it's politics, and I'm just totally biased in favor of some of that stuff. So it was just right in my alley already. What else can I tell you about the show itself? Okay, if you saw it or if you heard anything about it, it's very different. It took place in, a big train station or something, so they could socially distance people, and the producers promised that it would look like a movie. It would look like you're watching a movie, and it kind of did. So the production itself was unique, and it was new, and it was different, and mostly I thought that was pretty great. There was it was very serious, and okay, that's fine. Serious artists making serious movies and making serious commentary about a very serious world in a really screwed up year of getting rid of the Orange Menace and dealing with the pandemic. And okay, all right, I get it. I'm not sure why they felt that they had to completely strip away any sense of entertainment, of humor, because it was completely devoid of any entertainment value, certainly of even a whiff at humor. I think Harrison Ford attempted a little bit of humor in his own sort of old crotchety way. He's become this old curmudgeon now. That's his new thing. And then Glenn Close did a dance that was kind of funny and everybody enjoyed. But generally speaking, they didn't have a host. They didn't have any comedians or comic actors. There was nothing light or funny at all. And I appreciate that they're serious artists making serious films. Okay, that's fine. I get it. But I'm not quite sure why they decided to go 100% maudlin and serious. Except, of course, when they got to the In Memoriam section, and the music, they might as well have been playing a circus calliope. It was this high tempo, this up tempo. Now, it was Stevie Wonder, I'll Remember You Always. I'll remember you always. Okay, I get it. I mean, yeah, the lyrics are suitable. But it was so up tempo. It was kind of weird. And they just raced through the In Memoriam. Boom, boom, this one, that one. It was very odd. So they just made some weird choices. Stylistically, yeah, it was kind of cool. I like the style of the production. But, man, lighten up a little bit, could you? Hollywood they're already infamous for being self-congratulatory and self-important. They take themselves so seriously. And they took that whole idea just over the top this year. I tried to imagine anybody with a sort of conservative bent watching this, rolling their eyes the entire time, because I was rolling my eyes. I'm the biggest liberal tree hugger I know, and even I was going, come on, you guys, are you seriously? And how long ago was it now? It's just a couple of years from the hashtag Oscars So White. Well, they seem to have taken care of that. From what I could tell, Bryan Cranston and the aforementioned Harrison Ford were the only old white guys. Everybody else, women, people of color. So that's great. Took care of that. Even the winners, most of the winners were women and people of color, or people with very strong accents. So the traditional old white guy, heretofore in charge of everything and winning everything, no longer the case. So that's all good news. Yeah, for the first time maybe ever, I'm looking around. Anybody there look like me? No, I guess not. Those days are gone. Oh, and then just, let me see. Okay, one more thing. Screw Tyler Perry. I don't like Tyler Perry. I don't like what he does. He got this big humanitarian award. I mean, screw him. The guy's a billionaire. Do you know how easy it is to be a billionaire humanitarian? It's chump change. It's a nickel out of his pocket he can toss at problems and then take a big bow. Yes, he helps people. Yes, he has a foundation. Every billionaire has a foundation. But I'm not a fan of Tyler Perry. He and Spike Lee had a dust-up a couple of years ago. Spike Lee very critical of Tyler Perry's work, criticizing him, accusing him of creating modern-day Stepin Fetchits and Amos and Andy's, perpetuating the buffoonish stereotypes of black folks in America. And if it's a fight between Spike Lee and Tyler Perry, I'm going to side with Spike Lee. So lots of black folks very critical of Tyler Perry and his work and the way he does business, especially the way he treats writers. And what really got me in the end, and what did him in for me, was when he mentioned the middle. And I thought, wait a minute, did I hear him right? He goes down the list, and I just hate it when people do this. It's kind of like, well, I don't care if you're black or white or red or yellow or pink or purple. That's just stupid and way too easy and trite. Well, he did that. He kind of listed everybody. And he specifically said cops. There are good police officers. He couldn't wait to say that. Okay, am I hearing him right? I think I am. And then when he repeated himself, then I knew, yep, I heard him right. He said, meet me in the middle. Meet me in the middle. That is just so wrong, and you and I have talked about this many times. Anybody who wants to meet in the middle, if you're not going to use that position of winning this big humanitarian award and talking to the whole world on the Oscars, and if you're not going to take that opportunity to call out evil, if you're going to suggest that there's really no evil, there's just this great middle where we can all meet, no, you don't meet in the middle when there are open, unapologetic Nazis, fascists, and racists on the playing field. You don't invite them to join you in the middle. No, you stand there and boldly claim which side you are on. Which side are you on, Tyler Perry? If you're in the status quo middle and you think that's ever going to accomplish anything, you're terribly mistaken. If you're doing it for the good of your own business, if you don't want to turn people away by claiming any sort of partisan politics, well, then that's even worse. And I won't necessarily accuse you of that. Maybe that's not what you're doing. Maybe it is. I don't know. But even if it isn't, even if I give you the benefit of the doubt that you're just wrong, you are terribly, terribly wrong. I'm not going to meet you in the middle, Tyler Perry. No. So I wasn't crazy about that. Screw Tyler Perry. All right. Well, that's enough of that. That's everything I know. Oh, and speaking of people I'm not happy with, screw Bill Gates as well. We talked about him recently. We reviewed his book, How to, or What to Do About Climate Change, or whatever it was called. And he had all these dopey little suggestions right out of the boilerplate on how we can, turn our thermostats down. And he declares himself an expert on what to do about climate change. Just completely inadequate. And he gets to speak at the recent climate summit. I mean, screw him. And now, when asked about the pandemic and the vaccine, which he also considers himself a self-appointed expert, He was asked if intellectual property rights should be suspended, which of course they should. And he didn't hesitate for a second. No, they shouldn't. Private pharmaceutical companies have a right to their intellectual property. Screw that. That's exactly the problem with the world. The intellectual property itself, the formula, if you will, the recipe, should be shared with the world. It should be open sourced. And all the infrastructure, all the mechanisms required to distribute the vaccine need to be built up immediately. Remember when the pandemic broke out in China and overnight they were building these facilities? They were building hospitals in a matter of days. Well, that's what we need to do worldwide. We need to get this damn vaccine to everybody in the world. And if they don't have the know-how, the training, the infrastructure to do it, then just build it. Just do it. The Bill Gates of the world have plenty of money. Just take their money and do it. So I'm never a fan of billionaires generally, but even the so-called philanthropic ones, the Tyler Perrys of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, can go f*** themselves. Relative to their wealth, they're pitching pennies at our feet. It's also damn self-serving. He was quoted in this interview as saying that the thing that's holding things back in terms of the global vaccine rollout is not intellectual property. It's not like there's some idle vaccine factory with regulatory approval that makes magically safe vaccines. You know you've got to do the trial on these things. Every manufacturing process needs to be looked at in a very careful way. Well, of course it does. Of course it does. You don't think there are doctors and researchers and personnel in India who could handle this? That's not a reason. Build the facilities, provide the materials needed. I'm reading from Common Dreams right now. Critical advocates for robust and immediate change to intellectual property protections at the World Trade Organization when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccines, however, issued scathing indictments of Gates' defense of the status quo. Dr. Tara Van Ho. Gates speaks as if all the lives being lost in India are inevitable. Nick Dearden, executive director of Global Justice Now, one of the lead partner groups in an international coalition calling for WTO patent waivers, characterized Gates' remarks and the ideological framework behind them as disgusting. Who appointed this billionaire head of global health? Asked Dearden. Oh yeah, he did. Journalist Stephen Briani offered a similar negative view of the billionaire's awful arguments against sharing the vaccine technology. Gates, charged Briani, acts like an optimist, but has a truly dismal vision of the world. And it goes on and on. So, yeah, screw Bill Gates, screw Tyler Perry, on a business level, on a cultural and artistic level, on a humanitarian level. These guys are no heroes. Had it with billionaires. Take all their money and go get a paper out for all I care. You're not doing anybody any damn good. Well, okay. Really the big story of yesterday that I haven't gotten to yet. I've been distracted by things. The census numbers are out. And the big story is reapportionment. That's what we've all been waiting for, right? This is a pretty big dang deal. So here's the count. Losing congressional seats, one each: Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, Illinois, California, and West Virginia. So on a first look, that's bad news for Democrats, right? Ohio and West Virginia are the red states here, Michigan, PA, New York, Illinois, California, the blue states. Every one of those losing. Gaining 2 congressional seats, Texas. And then one each for Florida, North Carolina, Colorado, Oregon, and Montana. So at first look, all right, who voted for the Orange Menace? Florida, Texas, North Carolina, and Montana. 1, 2, 3, 4 versus 2 for Biden, Colorado, Oregon. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, did I say? Yeah. 4 compared to 2. So it looks like a net gain, especially with Texas getting 2 extra congressional seats. It looks like a net gain for Republicans. Now, you're going to see a lot of press on this. It's a big deal, and it is a big deal. But here's what I haven't seen, at least not yet. I've read several articles on this. It's a net gain or loss, I should say, of, I think, 3 electoral seats. So if you applied this math to the 2020 presidential election, Joe Biden would have got 303 electoral votes as opposed to 306. And yeah, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when elections are so very close, it's a big deal. Now, here's the part that I haven't seen, and I'm going to be a glass half full kind of a guy here. Oregon and Colorado are strictly blue. Nothing to worry about. Montana, strictly red. That's not going to change. But the other 3 states, Florida, Texas, and North Carolina, for my money, are all in play. Florida hasn't been a swing state lately, but it will be. North Carolina, one of the fastest growing states, especially along the coast. And Texas, urban areas, Austin, Houston, growing rapidly. What the census has not yet told us, and they will, I'm not sure what the timeline is on this, but we don't know the demographics. What we do know from other sources is that many of the new Texans are coming from, drum roll please, California. Now here's what I can't wait to find out. Are these Democrats moving from California to Texas? Because ever since the infamous Beto O'Rourke-Ted Cruz race, which was razor thin, and then the lead up to the 2020 presidential, Texas wound up going solidly red, but the demographics are changing. And Texas, for a while there, was looking like it might actually be a swing state. And looking ahead to 22 and then to the big presidential year of 24, I believe Texas will be in play. I can't wait to see the numbers on the demographics. I want to know who is moving to Texas. Now, Florida is another tough one. Florida and Texas are both fast-growing states. The migration from New York to Florida, which we've seen in the past in the persons of mostly older New Yorkers going to Florida to retire. But I don't know if that's still the case. We know that there has been a bit of an exodus from New York over the last year or two. New York and San Francisco, the 2 most expensive places in the world to live. And who's moving? Well, again, we don't have the 2020 census numbers, but the numbers we do have, the information we do have, tells us that it's a great number of young, educated professionals who largely vote Democratic. Young people vote largely Democratic. Educated people vote largely Democratic. Urban professionals vote largely Democratic. So I can't wait to see the results here in Florida and Texas. And we know that North Carolina is right on the precipice of being a swing state. It's only a matter of time and demographics. So as you're seeing all these reports, and you will be seeing them, you're seeing them already today, and maybe even on last night's news because of the announcements yesterday from the census. This might not be bad news. If you're a regular listener, if you've been listening from the beginning, I've mentioned several times on this program, I've done whole segments about asking lefties to move to swing states. Just move to swing states and outnumber them and start putting progressives onto school boards and city councils, into the state legislatures, and then eventually into the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, and then swing that state over to the lefty side for the Electoral College in presidential years. I've been advocating for this forever, especially places like California, New York, Illinois, solidly blue states There's no chance at all they're going to swing red anytime soon. Go ahead. Move to Texas. Move to Florida. Move to North Carolina. We've seen it happen only just here in the last couple of cycles. In Colorado, in Arizona, in Nevada. We're watching it happen. So you've been seeing news on this, and you're going to hear more today. And I would reserve judgment. I'm holding out hope that when we do see those demographics, it's going to look very good in Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, especially those 3 states. Now, there is a problem with gerrymandering because along with the once every 10 years reapportionment, we have now redistricting, and every state does it a little differently. In some states, the party in power has complete power over drawing those maps. In other states, there might be a split. For example, my state of Wisconsin, a Democratic governor, a Republican-led legislature, state legislature. So they have to agree on the maps, and there's a political fight, and maybe it goes to some sort of arbitration or some sort of judge, and, it's a big old thing. And then there are a handful of states who avoid that completely, and they have their own independent commissions. Now, here's another reason to call your representative to do whatever needs to be done to advocate for H.R. 1, currently sitting on the desk of Chuck Schumer, waiting for some movement in the Senate, and they can't get that done because of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. All the more reason to advocate for D.C. statehood, another bill passed by the House and languishing in the Senate. So if we can get any sort of movement on those 2 pieces of legislation, H.R. 1, of course, sweeping voter reform, I'm not sure. We are in a very tight window here coming up to the 2022 midterms. But this was a big story yesterday, the reapportionment. The other piece of the demographic puzzle, of course, is the whole urban versus rural thing. And urban voters are much more in play than rural voters. Urban voters are moving to other cities in other states. They're moving outside of their own cities into nearby suburbs. As far as who's moving where, most people, 80+%, stay very close to home. They're just moving to a new neighborhood in their own city, or they're moving maybe to the suburb of their city, or that small percentage moving to another state, but still to a city. Nobody, pretty much nobody, is moving from an expensive city to, out in the country in Montana. Yeah, there are a few people doing it. That's their dream, kind of their Green Acres dream, to find some little small town somewhere, to become rural people. That still happens, but it's statistically insignificant. That is not anything we have to think about or worry about. Urban folks are doing most of the moving, and they're moving to other urban areas. So that can be nothing but good news. The lefties, the Democrats, primarily are the ones on the move. We'll know more about this in the next few months when the census is able to give us some deeper figures. But I'm looking especially at those 3 states, Texas, Florida, and North Carolina. I'm looking at those 3 states. I'm salivating over them. And then if D.C. statehood becomes a reality, now we're talking. And just to be clear, I'm not after some power grab. I'm after a little bit of equity, a little bit of fairness. When states like North Dakota and South Dakota and Wyoming, Idaho, these small population states with way too much power in the Electoral College, in the United States Senate, it's crazy. Add to that any reform on the Supreme Court, if we can get a couple of more seats on the court. Again, it's not a power grab. It's not court packing. It's basic fairness. It's simple democracy. How about if the people of the United States are actually represented? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, I'm scrolling down on this article here. They've got it mapped out on where Republicans only control the drawing of the maps, and it's a little scary. And the 3 states I keep mentioning, Texas, Florida, and North Carolina, Republicans have control of those maps. So that's not good. That's not good at all. Democrats have control only in states that are already kind of not in play. Oregon, Nevada, Illinois, Maryland, Delaware, New York, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and New Mexico. So there's not a lot at play there at all. And the rest of the states have either independent commissions or the 2 parties fight it out. But I'm going to stay optimistic today. I want to be hopeful about these numbers. You're going to hear all sorts of commentary, like people know what they're talking about, and nobody's really quite sure at this point. But I'm telling you, there's reason to at least be holding out hope right now. That's all I'm saying. And then just one last thought on that. Mentioned the suburbs. And there was quite a lot of talk in the 2020 election because the Orange Menace was talking about the suburbs and seeming to think that they were this white bastion, kind of like the 1950s. Well, of course, they're not. There's a lot more diversity in the suburbs. They're so much more dynamic than they used to be. So you can't take anything for granted about the American suburbs. It's way too fluid. The reason I bring this up, it's important in regard to the conversation we've just been having, but also I found this really interesting article that I'm going to share with you. I'll share it on the Facebook page. It's from Vice.com, and the title is, the headline, "The People the Suburbs Were Built For Are Gone." A new book documents the retrofitting of obsolete suburban malls, box stores, office parks, parking lots, motels, and more. So it's a review of this, sounds like a fascinating book I'd like to read, by authors June Williamson, a professor of architecture at City College of New York, and Ellen Dunham Jones, a professor of architecture at Georgia Institute of Technology. The new book is called Case Studies in Retrofitting Suburbia, Urban Design Strategies for Urgent Challenges. So it's a Q&A with the authors here between Motherboard, which is the sort of the tech platform of Vice.com, and these authors. And they cover some of these things, the demographics of the new suburb, the built environment, how it's transforming, how it should be transformed, the kinds of people that are inhabiting the suburbs these days, their needs, their changing needs, what to do with these old abandoned malls, how to make these areas greener, how to reclaim them from this very sort of irresponsible 50s, 60s, and 70s build-out where environmental concerns were an afterthought, if considered at all. And they don't get directly into the politics of this, but I think it creates a really interesting foundation to think about the needs of the people who live in the burbs and how they're going to change over time and how they're changing presently. But I think it's really interesting then to put that into the context of what we were just talking about, how it's going to affect politics going forward. Again, this article in this book, I don't think gets into that too deeply, but definitely gives us a lot of groundwork to consider the politics of all of this. So once again, go to the Charles Purcell Facebook page. I'll link it for you. The People the Suburbs Were Built For Are Gone, from Vice.com. All right, let's leave it there for today. Go out and fight the good fight every day. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.